Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, folks. Hey, welcome to another episode of the Marketing in Practice podcast, the podcast where I have the pleasure of simplifying the marketing and the mindset so you, the chiropractor, can increase your income, your impact, and your enjoyment in practice too. Today's episode is going to be talking about practice success, the foundations that it's built upon. And really the big idea of today's episode is that practice success is built upon sustainable improvements and not about hitting home runs. Too often, we're tempted to go for the home run in our practice, and this leaves us vulnerable. Going for the home run is unsustainable, it's exhausting, it's time-consuming, it's costly, it's unpredictable, and it's often what ends up with frustration and burnout as well. I've got a great friend of mine who I believe has one of the more thriving practices in the world, like on any way you measure it in terms of patient retention, income, staff enjoyment as well. And I was chatting with him recently about what he thinks his key ingredient is. And he says, I just have been doing the basics for a long time. Now, he's very humble in the way that he talks about it. There's nothing flashy about his practice. He does all the things that you could be doing, but probably none of the things that you are, or not many of the things that you are doing. And I came across this personally just recently. I'm part of a coaching group, and one of the coaches who was teaching a module last week, they had an intensive there as well. His coaching business last year, the revenue was $108 million. I think they spent about $30 million on advertising. Their net profit was in the realms of kind of, $60 or $70 million. Now, he was teaching his lead generation strategies, and I was expecting that there was going to be something extraordinary, new tactics, new strategies, cutting edge things. But as he walked step by step through it, none of the things that he were doing were things that I couldn't be doing. There's certainly things that I wasn't doing. And I see this in practice all the time. When we look towards people who are doing amazing things, we think that they have special skills, that they're doing, things that are just outside of your comfort zone. And very, very often that's not the case, okay? So great practices are rarely doing anything that you can't do, but they're regularly doing lots of things that you are not doing as well. And so in today's episode, talking about the basics, I want to talk about internal referrals, and I want to have a discussion about that. Sometimes we get pigeonholed. Like I do a lot of external marketing. This is called the Marketing Your Practice podcast. And we put ourselves into silos of I have a practice that's about internal referrals or it's about external marketing. And it's a fake dichotomy that we create here. It should never be about one or the other. Great businesses are built on both of those. My favorite example to give is Apple, who spend more marketing money, more marketing dollars than any other company in the world. And yet they also have the strongest brand loyalty, internal referrals. Your marketing not only drives internal referrals, but it drives external referrals as well. So in this episode, we're going to dive into internal referrals. How do we get more of them? How do we do the very basics of it? And how do we set the basics up right? This is about, to some extent as well, of building in a level of redundancy. This is the other thing that great practices do. They're just doing several of the basics. There's not one thing that they do really great, because if your practice is built around just one thing, whether it be internal referrals, external referrals, a great chiropractor, a great front desk staff, we're very vulnerable if that person leaves or if that strategy stops working as well. So internal referrals, how do we get more of them, and how do we do it in a way that's effortless and easy and not pushy and doesn't make us feel because there's plenty of ways that comes about. I'll share some of my experience with that as well. The first thing and the most obvious, there's nothing rocket science about this statement, is internal referrals are a reflection of you doing a really good job, okay? Actually going above and beyond. It's not about just satisfying people's needs, because if we satisfy people's needs, that means, I've paid $5 and I've got $5 of value back. That's what I've expected. We have to deliver above and beyond as well. Now, there are lots of ways that we need to go about assessing this, but where I want you to begin this journey is with what's referred to as a net promoter score, okay? This can be done with an email, or it can be done verbally or at the front desk, but I'm going to suggest that you send out an email campaign across all of your patients as well. The net promoter score is a really widely used metric for looking at patient loyalty, okay? It asks your practice members, how likely are they to recommend your service? Now, I'm guessing that you would have received a net promoter score email at some stage. I get them from lots of big brands, from Apple and Nike and several other brands that have my email address as well. We would send them to a survey. Again, this could be done just pen and paper. They fill it out inside the practice, or you could easily set these up with surveys online. And it asks one simple question on a scale of 0 to 10, how likely are you to recommend Life Chiropractic to your friends or family member? Now, you'll also have the option underneath when you're asking this question and you're setting the survey up. Just do a search for, free survey. SurveyMonkey is one. There's plenty of free tools that you can use to set this up as well. And then underneath there, you'll have the option to provide any comments or feedback as well. So one question on a scale of 0 to 10, how likely are you to recommend Life Chiropractic, the name of your practice, to a friend or family member as well? And then underneath there is a section there for them to, go into any more details, leave any comments, provide any additional comments or feedback as well. So I'm going to take you step by step through this. You're going to send this out in an email. The email subject will be, we value your feedback. And then the email is going to say something like this. You might need to listen to this episode a couple of times there as well. Get the transcript of it. This is the email. Hope this message finds you well. At Life Chiropractic, we're committed to not just meeting, but exceeding your expectations for your chiropractic care. Your health and satisfaction are our absolute top priorities, and your feedback plays a crucial role in helping us to achieve this goal. Could you please spare a moment to complete a short one survey question? Your response helps us to understand what we're doing well and where we can improve. Click the link below and it'll take you directly there. All the best, Angus and the team at Life Chiropractic. So that's it. That's the email that you would send. Now, what do we do with that data as well? How do we score the Net Promoter Score? So again, in front of them, they're going to score on a 0 to 10. Now, basically, we want to categorize all of the scores into 3 different sections. Promoters. These are people that scored you 9 and 10. These are our most enthusiastic and loyal practice members. Okay, we want more of these as well. Then there's the passives. These are the people that score you a 7 and an 8. These practice members are satisfied, but they're not enthusiastic enough to be considered promoters. And then we have the detractors. This is anybody that scores from 0 to 6. 0 to 6. These practice members are not particularly thrilled with your service. They're unlikely to recommend your practice as well. And they might even discourage other people. Okay, so three groups: promoters, 9s and 10s, passives, 7 and 8s, and detractors, 0 to 6. So we would send this email out to our entire patient list as well. And then we want to calculate the percentage of each group, the promoters and the detractors. Okay, so we ignore those passives as well. So the maths might be this. Let's just say that you send it out to 100 people, or you got 100 responses as well. And in this, 70 of the responses were promoters, 20 of them were passives, and 10 were detractors. So we get rid of them. So we had 70 promoters and 10 detractors. So we're going to do some maths here as well. But in fact, before I get into the maths in terms of this as well, a score of 0 is generally pretty good. Okay, so if we've got a balance there as well, anything above 50 is excellent. Now, my experience is you certainly want to be scooting for a score above 50, 60, 70. If you're wanting to get more internal referrals, then certainly 50 and above should be your absolute goal. When you're looking at the research and the data in around Net Promoter Scores, as I mentioned before, they often say a score of 0, kind of a balance between them is reasonable. I think we need to go well beyond that as well. So if we had 70 out of 100 people were promoters, that's 70%. And if we had 10 out of 100 were detractors, that's 10%. We minus 70, 10 from 70, and that'll give us 60%. So our score in this scenario here would be 60. That'd be a great score. Okay, so where I'm going to suggest that you begin this journey is by sending out an email and getting your Net Promoter Score. Now, could you do this with every patient that just comes in? Get a piece of paper with this printed out and have them circle it. As long as you give them opportunity to do this anonymously, then absolutely you could do this. So tally up all the scores after a month of doing this. But doing it on an email is a really efficient way for you to do this. So you're getting the best out of your associates, out of your front desk staff as well. So the final thing that you want to do is that you want to get your score there too. And then you also want to look back at what is the feedback? What are people telling you that you're doing great? And what are people telling you that you're doing poorly? Okay. Now, again, random one comment that somebody says, I really don't like the taste of your tea at the front desk. Or if one person says that you run behind. But if you've got several people giving you the same feedback, it's about implementing change to improve that, okay, and taking this on board. Now, when and how often should you do the Net Promoter Score? There's probably a couple of times that you should be doing it. I think you should be doing it with practice members when you get your initial first review. For most of us, that's in around that 12 visit phase there. And again, this could be automated over email. And then probably once or twice a year, you should be sending this out to your entire database. Okay, so everybody. I suggest to community influencer members twice a year that they be doing this. So Again, when somebody gets to visit 12, their review, get them to do that on the checkout and the way out. This might be a manual one that they fill out. And then again, twice a year, you send out a kind of bulk email to be doing that. So this will start to give you a baseline as well in terms of if you're not getting a lot of referrals, this will tell you why. Okay, what we've got to improve. This gives you great feedback. There's several other things that you can do. It was really quite a trend, 10 or so years ago to have practice members come together and do a focus group. You could get somebody external outside of your practice, get 10 of your best patients, sit them down for lunch, and then just ask them, what do we do great? What do we do poorly? And where is there room for improvement? So this sort of focus group can be really helpful also. Another great spot for you to mine in terms of how you can find improvement in your practice is actually your front desk staff. These are some of your greatest assets. They hear things that you don't hear. Practice members have conversations with them that you don't have. And getting them intricately involved in giving you feedback. There are several practices that I know that really have a very flat hierarchy. We tend to set ourselves up as that we're the boss of our CAs, and this discourages them from giving you great feedback. And I think if we start to open up a much more kind of flat feedback where our CAs can be and should be sharing information about how we could do a better job. I know there are several practices where the CAs often come into the initial consultations, the report of findings, they sit in their scribe and they take notes. But we have to be really open to this type of feedback. We have to trust our CAs in this scenario. But these are three different pathways that you could go to start to look at what are we doing great and how do we improve. Net Promoter Score, focus groups, and then getting feedback from your staff as well. So let's just assume that we're doing really great with this. We've got a good score. There'll be a number of internal referrals that will naturally happen without you doing anything, okay? Now, internal referrals, I've had Alan Dibb on the podcast numerous times. He's become a friend of mine. He's a great guy, and he wrote the book called The One-Page Marketing Plan. And he has a comment in there where he says, internal referrals are a little bit like a free dinner. It's great when you get one, but these are not a strategy for you to feed your family. One of the challenges with internal referrals is that often we're not really in control of them. Like we can't necessarily generate an extra 10 next week. Now, some practices say they can. I've not predictably. They're quite sort of passive. Now, I will share the process I went through to make them a bit more active in a moment. But when we're doing our external marketing tends to be a little bit more predictable. We know that if we run a Facebook ad or a Google ad, that if we double the budget, sometimes we can, double the number of people that are coming into us. We can be in a bit more control of those. But I want to talk with you about what can we do to improve our own internal referrals? How can we get more of those? Now, I've been taught several strategies over the years, and most of them I never liked, and I kind of came up with mine more by accident. But you've probably heard this concept of the who do you know question. This was a kind of question that we were told to ask practice members after they share a success story, maybe at a workshop or a table talk conversation. The process might go a little bit like this. Perhaps the patient shares a success story. We respond with celebration and congratulations, and then we pivot and we say something like this, like, Steve, who else do you know that's having migraine headaches who might benefit from chiropractic care? The goal was to get a bunch of names off them that either we got phone numbers and followed up with them, or to encourage them to reach out to those people. Like, here's a referral pack. Could you reach out to them, let them know that chiropractic could help with them? Here's a voucher here, maybe for a half price initial consultation as well. For me, this always felt really icky. It felt horrible. I tried it a couple of times early on in my practice, and I felt dirty doing it as well. Now, this could well be just me. I'm happy to buy that this is my take on things there as well. If this is a strategy that you use and if it works really well for you and there's authenticity there, it just didn't feel authentic. That's why it didn't work for me. But if it works for you and there's authenticity there, by all means, keep on trying it as well. My accountant also kind of ran this script on me at one stage as well. So we were going through some stuff. At the end of a visit, he said, look, Angus, by the way, who else do you know that might need some accounting services? I really felt like telling him to fuck off at that stage. It just didn't feel good. There was nothing about it that felt nice at all. So I think maybe this was a strategy that might have worked in the past, but I don't see it as a strategy that's working really great now. I certainly don't see many Aussie chiropractors working for it. And I work with chiropractors around the world. I don't have anybody that's telling me that this is working great for them. But that being said, if it's working great for you, keep on doing this well. So what did I end up pivoting to instead? How was I maybe able to create an option where I could have conversations that didn't kind of feel like this? The way I went about this is I just told lots of stories. So part of my regular table talk was just to share patient success stories. Now, I did this in the early days because it was a great way just to educate people. Instead of actually, going through the anatomy and the physiology of chiropractic, I could just share a success story and we could kind of educate under the radar, as my friend Russ Rosen would say as well. And so I would pick a story and I would share that certainly for the day. And I might share that with every fourth or fifth patient. Now, the reason I didn't share it with all of them, I had a kind of open plan area. And so often, there would be 3 to 5 people that might be kind of listening at once, people on the tables next to me and those that were kind of getting ready for their adjustment as well. So, I would share it kind of every third, fourth or fifth person as well. I'll give you an example of how this might go. So I might be checking in with a practice member. I might go, Steve, great to see you. Anything new or different? And Steve might say, whatever. He's had a great weekend. Yeah, I'm doing great. This is improving. It's not. And invariably somewhere in the conversation, he would say like, how are you doing? And I might go, great. I'm feeling really good. I'm a bit inspired at the moment. I had a beautiful experience with a patient this morning, a woman who I've been seeing who's had, 2 years of migraine headaches. Got to the stage there where she was, had to not basically work. She was working part-time because of the migraine headaches. They'd stopped her from exercising. She put on a bunch of weight. She tried a whole bunch of things as well. And I saw her this morning and she's just had 2 weeks without migraine headaches. And it's been a decade since she's done that. And so I would just share a story, an authentic story. It didn't have to be a recent story. Sometimes I would go, how you doing? I'm just, I was checking in with a patient of mine and reminded of the times that she, so any story that we want to share. Now, I would share that story and usually 1 out of 10 people after sharing a story like that would say something to me, I didn't know that chiropractic could help with migraines, or I've got a friend that's got migraine, or I've got a coworker that's migraine headaches as well. So they would come through to me and I would often think about this as that, they would throw me a softball, like they would tee it up there for me and they're opening a dialogue for me. Now, what I realized at this situation, the key to my success and what felt easy in this situation was at this stage not for me to promote me, but was for me to promote chiropractic. Okay, so I'd say something like this. Do you think they might be up for seeing a chiropractor? I've got a fabulous network of chiropractors literally around Australia that I could put them in contact with. Now, invariably, more times than not, they would then come back and say, oh, no, they're like local here. I work with them. They could come here. It's my brother. It's my sister as well. But I wanted it to not look like me. I wanted it to not look like that I was trying to promote my practice, but I wanted it to be promoting chiropractic. And this was part, I think, that had an ease about it. And for those of you, I'm quite introverted. I'm not pushy in nature there too. I like a patient-centered practice rather than to be about promotion. So this just felt really easy for me. So again, I'd share a story. About 1 out of 10 people would say, I've got a friend like that. Do you think that you could help them as well? And I would say, or do you think chiropractic could help? Or I would say, do you think they'd be open for seeing a chiropractor? I've got a great network of chiropractors around Australia. I'd love to put them in contact with them as well. Now, if they would respond back with, they're local, I think they would come here. What I wanted to do at this stage here was do a bit of a withdrawal. I wanted to take a couple of backward steps at this stage. And I would say something like this, they could come here. And I go, look, I'd love to see them. Not all migraine headaches come from the spine, but certainly a lot of them do. Do you think they would be up for jumping on the phone with me? I could have a brief conversation with them, find out a little bit more about their migraines. If I think it's a chiropractic problem, then we could see them here. And if I think it's not that, I could find out what's going on and I can get them started on a path to relief. Again, this statement here is about me. Again, it's not about promoting my practice. It's about finding help for their loved one, their friend, their co-worker. So 2 key distinctions there. Don't make it about me but make it about chiropractic. And then what I want to do is I also wanted to take control of these conversations, because if you give it to the patient, they get distracted. They're not as good as explaining chiropractic as what I am. Sometimes they feel awkward about it too. And so I'd ask that question, do you think they'd be up for hopping on a phone call with me? I'd love to find out a little bit more about what's going on with their migraine headaches. If it's a chiropractic problem, I can point them in that direction, because not all migraines come from the spine. If it's something else that's going on, I'll be able to find that out and I can get them on a path to getting some relief. Do you think they might be up for that? And most times, by most, I say 9 out of 10, they're like, yeah, would you hop on the phone with them? And I go, I would, but you need to talk with them first, because I'm not going to cold call them, because that would be not cool. Have a chat with them when you're at work this afternoon. If they're up with that, then just let me know when you're in your adjustment on Thursday and I'll kind of tee up a time. So sometimes I would do it that way. Sometimes I would say, you've got my mobile number, because I gave my mobile number to all of my patients. Have a chat with them. If they're up, send me a message, and then I'll kind of tee up a time to chat with them. So these are the steps I'm going through. And then what I would do is I would get on the phone with this person. And I've done so many of these phone calls and I tested them in many different ways. The key with this is I just do a basic consultation. I would say, again, I would check in. We would bond over the referral. Hey, I see that you work with Sue. How long have you worked with Sue for? We love that she comes into the practice there too. Are you in the same accounting department? We do a little bit of that small talk and we connect first. Sue tells me that you have some migraine headaches. Tell me a little bit about those. What have you tried? What hasn't worked? So I would go through a basic history throughout this process. And then after asking a few questions, and usually a few questions is 3, 4, 5, I would say, if I thought it was generally the case, this sounds like there might be a component of your spine that might be contributing to this. My suggestion would be, let's get together. Let me do a much more thorough exam. Obviously, we can talk here, but I need to check your posture and feel through your spine as well. If your migraines are coming from your spine, we get really, really great results with those as well, and we'll be able to help. And if they're not, I'll find out more in that exam and we'll get you on the path to getting some relief. Does that sound fair? Yeah, lovely. My next available is Thursday at 2 p.m. Can that work for you? And then we just go through and book the appointment. Now, I was having at least one and often several of these conversations each and every week. My practice members got used to the fact that I'd be happy to talk with their friends for them. So they'd often say, hey, I've got a buddy that's having some sciatica. Do you think you could help? Yeah. Would you mind hopping on the phone? And they would bring these telephone conversations to me. I loved having them. And I had these conversations with people, even if there was no chance of them ever coming in to see me. I would talk with patients that are on the other side of the country because it was about promoting chiropractic. And that's what my practice members knew. This wasn't the intent underneath it is the most important thing. This was always about me helping people. And the side effect of that is it also really grew my practice. But it also meant there were times that I had to help people, I wanted to help people that were on the other side of town or the other side of the country, that there was never an option of them coming to my practice. And that level of integrity and authenticity was really important in having the confidence of my practice members, okay? So if you want to stimulate more internal referrals, then tell more stories. Now, the worst thing that can happen is that you just tell stories and people get educated and excited and enthused about chiropractic. But what will happen with this is that probably 1 out of 10 will throw you a softball and they'll say, I've got a friend like that. Do you think you could help them? Okay. And then you will start to go through that dialogue there of saying, absolutely. And I've got a network of chiropractors everywhere as well. Where are they based? They're here local. Oh, great. Well, would you think they might be up for jumping on a phone call with me? Because again, not all cases of insert colic, sciatica, asthma come from the spine there as well. I can have a conversation with them. Make sure they talk to the person first because you're not cold calling. So this needs a little bit of kind of follow-up back and forwards and start having lots of conversations. So this meant I was having several of these conversations each week and I was generating my own internal referrals, okay? So I didn't have to ask people, who do you know there too? This conversation happened quite organically, naturally, authentically. And by doing this consistently, week in and week out, I was generating my own internal referrals as well. This is a really simple thing for you to be able to do. So let's wrap this episode up a bit, okay? Practice success is built upon small, sustainable improvements, not hitting home runs, okay? I want you to start, okay? I want you to start with this net promoter score. Let's see how good a job you're doing. Remember, great practices have redundancies built into them. They're not just doing one thing great. Across the board, they've got the basics down as well, okay? Great practices aren't doing anything that you cannot do, but chances are they're regularly doing things that you are not doing, okay? Internal referrals are a sign that you are delivering value to your community, and your net promoter score will give you a really objective way of measuring that also. To stimulate more referrals, tell more stories, invite people to chiropractic, not to your practice, and see if you can get in control of those. See if you can get in control of the conversation by getting people on the phone. They're really fun conversations to have. It's all about helping people. Folks, that's it for this episode. Thanks for all that you do. Keep saving lives. Your community needs you doing this. Your community needs you to make sure that you're doing a really good job. They want to hear stories from you, okay? Your practice members want help in bringing their families and friends into you, and you can help to generate these referrals yourself, and you can do it in a way that's really cool and easy and generous and not sleazy and pushy. Until next time, folks, thanks again for all that you do. Keep saving lives. See you back here soon. Bye. If you've enjoyed listening to this podcast, you have to come and check out my Community Influencer Program. It's my monthly coaching program where we take all this material and I'll work with you to help you apply it, implement it, and systemize it. The Community Influencer Group Coaching Program is designed to help you increase your practice income, impact, and enjoyment. Join me over at anguspyke.com/join. That's anguspyke.com/join. I'd love to see you there.